Okay. And there we go for episode 1 of Happy Hour at the Old Timer Tavern. And I'm faking it because I've had the kind of day where if I actually were imbibing a potent potable, I'm not entirely sure the universe would be safe. Um, I had the thought to do that, but I'm not sure I want to anymore.
Just be a ponytail and
Oh God. Well, you don't know panic until you have the rapid mental succession of I've knocked my microphone off of its I've knocked my boom microphone out of its stand while I'm in the middle of starting class, coupled with crap, I've just knocked over my water bottle that sits next to my boom stand. Crap, it is now pouring into my computer box.
no.
Oh yeah, that's a whole new level of panic that I am not wholly familiar with. But that was part of my day, and I had the easy one. I'm going to say this now to see if anything interesting happens in this 10 seconds. I'm not authorized to talk about how insane my wife's day has been.
You have not been given permission.
I didn't hear that.
I said, I'm not saying anything.
You're not authorizing me?
No.
Okay, I am
No, but
I am still not authorized to say. The short form of it is when they say it's an independent living facility, they really mean you need to know all of the questions you're going to ask about what they're going to provide while you're living there. I think that a better one might be assume nothing.
Right.
But
Oh, phew.
we're here to do more than just that. My name is Rob. I go by Lantern Noir when I'm here on the Twitches. And apparently I need to get on the Twitters as well. I'm on the Facebook also as The Adventures of Lantern Noir, and on the YouTube, same name, and or under Lantern Noir Presents. And I am joined by this amazing fellow who will do his own introduction.
I'm Graybeard of Graybeard's Tavern, and you can find me pretty much everywhere as Graybeard Tavern. The S gets a little long and weird, and there's a tavern in Florida known for arson and prostitute murder. So, if you get on the wrong Google search, that's what you'll find.
Okay, I feel like you buried a lead.
So yeah, skip that S.
So Graybeard Tavern, no.
Oh.
Graybeard's Tavern,
Mhm.
yes.
Other direction. No
Great.
S.
No S.
Drop the S.
Drop the S.
So Graybeard Tavern.
Boom.
Yeah, they
Okay.
yeah. So I've been at this a while, and I'm not very technical, but I sure love gaming. So that's
So that's where we are.
yeah. I have been gaming since 1977.
Ooh. Ooh.
Yeah, I saw Star Wars and played my very first game of D&D opening weekend for Star Wars in 1977. It was like, geek epiphany. And yeah, I've been loving it ever since. So
Amen to that. I think my first character came about around 79 or 1980. I'm a little younger, but not by enough. I don't even remember seeing Star Wars in the theater, but I remember growing up with the action figures. And my cousin was the one that was my point of entry into D&D. In fact, there are many a tale of him getting my younger sister involved, and her character killed mine.
oh,
And an 8-year-old Noir had some tears
breaking heart.
because
Was that like a red box, Mulvaney era?
I think it was Redbox for his set. But before we get into all of that, some backstory. Gray and I are both members of an amazing channel for an amazing streamer who streams under the moniker Indoor Adventurer. He is like, I mean, if you have to pick which D&D stream to watch, I would not say do mine first. You would totally. It's kind of like if you only see one movie this Christmas, see the new Star Wars movie. But if you see two, and in that role, Indoor Adventurer is definitely the Star Wars movie. But we got talking in his channel that we have a lot of stories between us about the old days of D&D. And as I put in the kind of like my plug, we don't always have the answers to what's going on in the D&D community, but that's not going to stop us from offering them. So we got talking. We said, hey, we should get together and sit down and do a show of just two old farts prattling on about Dungeons and Dragons. In fact, my wife even gave me a little bit of grief. She's like, who really wants to hear two old, mostly straight white dudes talk about Dungeons and Dragons issues? And I said, yes, but we have the wisdom of years. We've got a little bit more.
Yeah, it's really, if you look at how things have changed and where we started and where we're headed and what happened in between, it's nice to, take a moment maybe and listen to just, because speaking of Indoor, Indoor, I was on with him on someone else's channel the very first time he streamed a couple years ago, and now look where he's at. I mean, he's an amazing DM, utterly fantastic, and I'm very happy to have been there at the beginning to see it. It's great. Just streaming Dungeons and Dragons. Who would have thought, back 8-year-old me being in my 50s, playing D&D on the internet, because there was no internet.
Well, okay. Now, to be fair, we back when we were kids, okay, first of all, we're going to need to come up with a tagline for that or some kind of a button I can push, because I think that's going to become one of those drinking game kinds of things around here.
Right.
But I remember in high school picking up Shadowrun and them postulating that we were going to live in a world where all the computers were connected and you could get on one computer in one place and it would connect you to another computer in another place. And I used to laugh because you could get in and they would have like coffee machines connected to this matrix. And I'm a lot of things, who the heck is going to plug their coffee machine into the network? Like, why on earth would I have access through the matrix to the office coffee maker?
Yes,
and there was a moment, like I want to say it was like last summer, it finally hit me like, holy crap. Hackers could, in theory, get control of my coffee maker.
We went and looked at refrigerators not that long ago, and some of them have a display on the outside that will show you what's on the inside on a flat screen on the outside of the thing, and you can from there order groceries.
Oh yeah.
You can touch the screen and order groceries without ever opening your refrigerator. It's really hard to explain to some people, younger folks, how mind-boggling that is. How absolutely just you would have never ever, in your wildest dreams thought of that. You said, hack the coffee machine.
Well, I think it speaks a lot to not just the maturation of our society's technology, but just kind of the thoughts that we have. And so, like when we started with gaming, it was very different than gaming today. And so our first topic we kicked around was maybe we should just cover an overrun. In theory, not in theory, but it is happening. I'm going to school for IT, and my teachers tell me it's actually happening. Welcome aboard, Raven Knight. By the way,
hey, buddy.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what exactly a hacker wants with my coffee maker. Also, hi. By the way, are you watching the chat on your end via the channel?
I have the chat up, yes, but I don't watch the stream itself, so I cannot see what we look like and whatnot.
Oh,
but I do have the chat.
We look awesome.
All right.
We look epic. So I'll take that.
Let me ask, because you touched on it. What was your first character's name in 1980 or so?
Oh Lord, I would have to go dig it up. And here's in my defense. Here's why.
Mm-hmm.
When I first got Dungeons and Dragons, so I started with. I actually did not start playing with the red box. What ended up happening is my cousin had the red box, and my dad had mentioned at work he was retelling the story of young noir crime because his younger sister killed him, and. His coworker came in the next day and said, I found this. You should pass it on to your kid. And it was the original blue cover Dungeons and Dragons book. That one. Yep.
Yeah, that's my 1977 blue cover.
Not just your coffee maker,
nice.
But to your network. Well, yes, everything's connected to the network, but that's... I do get nervous about that. We had a kid playing Hearthstone on our Wi-Fi. He was hosting a tavern event off my home Wi-Fi. And I'm like, that is... Like, I was half torn between angry at him for hijacking our Wi-Fi and also for not inviting me to play.
There you go. Like, exactly.
And the worst...
when I first...
Go
ahead. Oh, when I first started streaming, that was my go-to, was Hearthstone on like Friday nights and stuff. So yeah, I began as a big Hearthstone person. But yeah, you're like, good job, because I would have totally done that if I was a kid.
It's only a felony at a federal level, but hey.
Yeah,
felonies between friends. But in my my defense, when I started playing with the Blue Book, there were only 2 of us in the neighborhood that were capable of playing Dungeons and Dragons. And I had always conned the other kid into being in charge of being the DM. So I had a troop of characters. So I had a fighter, I had a cavalier in training, I had a paladin, a wizard, I had or magic user back in the day. I had the cleric, I had the rogue, and I just had this binder full of character sheets because that's how we would play. Because at the time, it was pretty normal in first edition to have troop play. I'm going to play the cleric and the rogue, and you can play the fighter and the magic user. And then we can, if so-and-so's little sister wants to play, we can give her the magic user, because all they got to do is fire a magic missile once, and then they go hide in the back.
Carry the lantern.
Yeah.
I always try to tell people, Redbox, Mulvaney D&D, we would show up on a Friday night with 6 index cards, and each index card was a character. And if you ended up Sunday afternoon when you had to go home from whosever house you stayed at for the weekend, if you had 1 or 2 of those cards left for the next week, you were like, yes,
Well, the movie Darkness Rising.
Yes.
Which is the game. It's called Gamers 2: The Darkness Rising. They really riff hard on that because one of the characters in the movie brings a binder full of characters, so that as his characters die, he just pops out a fresh one and drops it down.
Oh yeah! Oh, so awesome. We played a Pendragon campaign, and we had everyone, you had to do your knight's heraldry on a card, and when you died, your card got pinned to the wall in the game room. So all the knights had their shields upon the wall because an honorable death. So I know my first character's name because it was silly and dumb, and we So the guy I played with had played in '76 at the premiere with Gaiax at Gen Con, because again, Michigan, it was an easy run. And that my first DM was like 16 and I was 8. But the cascade of coincidences and things that led, me, the youngest player at 8 years old, to be playing with someone who was 16, because he went to Gen Con with his dad in '76 and found Dungeons and Dragons. So they it cascaded down where his sister was a couple years younger than him, and she was on the same soccer team as my best friend, who was 2 years older than me, and we were best friends because we were the only kids in the school with divorced parents.
So, and that says a lot about the time as well.
Yes.
Not that is its own thing, but yeah, that definitely is a cavalcade of coincidence.
Yeah, that led me to being able to see my first, have my first game. His name was Rock, and he was not a class. He was an Earth Elemental. We all, Mark, our DM, had us all play Earth Elementals. So I was Rock, the Earth Elemental. Flame or Blaze was my buddy Mike. His first character was the Fire Elemental, and Misty was the Air Elemental, who was Mark, the DM's sister. And so, so like I said, it was ancient times.
And that's shockingly progressive, because when I started we got to the Red Box era, and my neighbor got the Blue Expert Edition, which for the life of us, none of us could figure out.
Yeah.
Because at our age, the D&D we knew when we played that old first edition was kick down the door, kill the monsters, have someone draw the map on the graph paper, and then figure out which are the doors and go to the next room.
Yes.
And so when we started getting like the first expert adventure was like this open world wilderness kind of meander around, like none of us knew what to do with it because there was no opening door. Like
right,
every other adventure we got in had been, okay, here's the scenario and you arrive at this entrance, go. And now it was like, okay, where do you want to go? And we all kind of sat and looked at each other and went, I don't know, what do you want to do? Because we're all 10 and our power fantasies at 10 were not explore the wilderness and develop interesting backstories. It was, well, what monster can I kill now?
Right. Am I high enough level to kill the next thing on the chart?
Yeah. Have we gotten to dragon stage yet? Nope. Okay, good. Let's kill some more stuff.
Yeah.
And the biggest.
I was going to say the old wandering monster charts. Like everything had a wandering monster. Like nowadays, so I think there's a good one to explain. Like I had said, we would show up after school Friday night, and we would start playing, and we would have to be peeled from the basement or the dining room table to eat, to then rush back and play until, one of the parents is like, would you idiots be quiet and let us sleep that late at night? And then you would wake up, as soon as someone was moving around in the house, and they would wake everyone else up. And you would play again until, like I said, until your parents were like, you need to get home. It's Sunday. You need to take a shower.
Con rules. 6-2-1. 6 hours of sleep, 2 meals, and if probable, 1 shower.
Yep.
Oh, everyone forgets that one. It drives me nuts. But so that gets us what? First edition lasted. I think I got my first second edition book. I got access to my first second edition book just before we moved out to Birmingham. And that's those guys.
Yeah. So I went
advanced. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing for me that changed with that is there were just more spells to keep track of, and some more and more choices in classes. Like they kind of expand, but there weren't a lot of major changes. Unless is that when Thaco came in?
Yes, and also it was when you could pick races and classes. You know, dwarf in Redbox, dwarf was a class, elf was a class. Right. And then suddenly in first edition, you could be an elven fighter or, you know, a halfling rogue type thing instead of just a halfling who by default was a rogue.
Which makes some sense when you... Yeah, well, that's why we like to do this, is to tell these stories get you guys a sense of where we've been and where we're going. And I think, just to riff on that for a moment, I think the more we think about where role-playing games have been, it makes it easier to talk about progressing them further. Because I do think that one of the things we forget about that early basic edition is how much it was taking from the literature of the time, which is you had a troop of people, and they might have a dwarven friend, and all the dwarves were alike, or they might have an elven friend, and all the elves were alike, or a hobbit. And so they didn't really get into a lot of like depth with that. If there was variety or diversity, it would be among the humans.
Right, because you'd be the human, mage, fighter, rogue, you know, all the other classes.
Yeah, but dwarves are good for beating things down and sprinting across short distances. And, you know, elves are, you know, the archer spellcasters.
Because, they all have magic. Everybody knows that.
Yeah. And it was even weird because I remember my cousin had told me about Advanced and how you could be like a dwarven ranger. And, there were rangers and there were dwarven classes. Because if I remember right, in Advanced, you couldn't be a dwarven ranger. That was a forbidden class race combo. Yeah,
and couldn't be... Paladin was only elf and human. Yeah, and there were level restrictions too. So, like, if you were a halfling, you could only be a fighter up to 7th level. You could never be an 8th level halfling fighter. But you could multi-class and be a fighter thief and just, you know, rip up levels like that until you got to, you know, your level caps.
Right.
So, yeah, there was quite the situation.
Well, they had you splitting your experience points. If you were multi-class, you had to deviate your experience into each individual class. So if I was playing a straight up human magic user, I would be 5th level. And if you were playing a multi-class dwarven fighter cleric, you'd be a 2nd level fighter and a 2nd level cleric with some extra XP lying around, which made these crazy combos that almost made multi-classing like either the whole party did it or nobody did it.
Well, and then even the classes themselves had different experience charts.
Oh God, yes.
So if you were a wizard or a fighter, you had to get millions of experience points to get to the higher levels. Where the rogues were like, I'm 10th level, boys. I'm sorry you're stuck at 4th, but I got things, you know, I'm going to stab.
Would Groot be considered an ent?
Sure.
I'm gonna go. Sure.
I'm about it.
I think the difference is Groot. I think Groot would actually. No, I'm going to push back because the difference between the ents, as I remember them from the fictions, is that they were much slower of thought and much more introspective, and Groot seems to have much more independence, and empathy. So I would almost wonder if he was some kind of a plant elemental.
Ooh.
Is where I would categorize Groot if I had to go somewhere with that. I'd have to go flipping through some books to see what I could do with that, but that's where I would lean. Although,
what if you were going to make him a character? I would almost say I'd make him like a Warforged druid.
Oh, I like what you're thinking. I do think though, if I were talking to a new player and they said, "Wait, what's an ent?" I would go, "It's kind of like Groot, but about 9 times his size."
Yeah, and about 1% of his energy, because Groot likes to dance, get down. So yeah.
My wife may or may not have a dancing Groot phone charger in her car.
Might or might not.
Might or might not. I can neither confirm nor deny that. So we got...
Because you've not been authorized.
I've not been authorized. I have to be careful. Although, what's funny is I'll say I'm not authorized, and if she gets on tonight with me and we just decide we're going to play some Red Dead and stream it while we play, she will go to town with what she has what's on her mind. She has zero filter when we're streaming.
Nice. Oh, man.
But, so we did, and that was, you're right, that was the biggest change that came with that. And I think that was the addition that really drove the wedge between nerds and non-nerds when it came to role-playing games, because the math was so complicated. There were so many charts and tables, and there was so much bookkeeping with your characters. That it was really it was this massive barrier to entry. We were talking about THACO, which was the concept. I almost want to get my whiteboard out because I have a whiteboard app I use for teaching. And I almost want to put it up here and say, let's talk about how you figure out whether or not you hit something. But it was...
Page 75.
Yes. Is that the THACO table?
Yes. By class.
By class. Because they were trying to come up with a mechanism to tell you how likely you were to hit a particular target based on armor class that was backwards.
Right.
Because the armor class was built around the idea of how much you were subtracting from the roll to get the hit.
Yeah.
You're right. It's like the armor class 0 was good. Armor class 10 was normal.
Right.
So,
yeah, and if wearing nothing, and not even a gambeson.
Yeah, and you had to roll it. Your D20 roll was then. It's been so long since I did this in my head. Your target to hit was 20 minus their armor class. So.
Yeah, I can't even remember because again, now I'm looking at the chart. So, to hit 0 for thieves and assassins.
Okay, so let's take a 3rd level thief. What's it say?
All right, 3rd level thief needs to hit 0 to hit someone with plate mail and shield, with no dexterity bonus. Needs a 20. Whilst
the THACO is 20 or the THACO is 0?
The THACO. Well, no, THACO is 20. Yes, okay. That is the number to hit armor class 0. Yeah, and so they would need a 20 to hit 0. So then what you would do is, if it was a negative armor class, you would still need 20 until -5. Then you'd need 21 and so on and so forth. But if your armor class was, say, padded armor 9, you would only need a 12 or higher to hit the whatever it was. Oh, dude, so backwards. Raven Knight, I'm so confused.
Yes, you are. And
that will for 2 editions.
I had a dial that I printed out and put together with a sticker on it in the middle, those little metal thingies you open up so you could spin it. Yeah. And you would dial up you would look up your THACOs, and then it would guide across as to what you were able to hit based on your die roll to do all the math for you. So on your character sheet, you'd write THACO 5 or whatever, or THACO 20, and then you would dial it to this, and then you'd look around and say, okay, what's the monster's armor class? It's 13. I need this to hit it. Because it was all the charts in one. I don't know where I found it, and the librarian at my middle school hated us because the middle school library bought the Dungeons and Dragons rule books.
But
we couldn't check them out because they were considered reference material. So we had to subsist on meeting in the library after school and then running copies of everything. So like we had entire like binders full of copies of all of the rules we wanted because we kept sending her back to because she wouldn't let 7th graders access to the copy machine in 1980, whatever it was.
Right. Because, oh my God.
Well,
are you mad?
the photocopier was that was high technology. It was the Ditto machine is what we all got our worksheets on because that was where the tech was. And so, yeah, we subsisted totally on those. But that was also when I found my true love in Dungeons and Dragons. Like I finally, like there are a few moments in my life I have known true love. I met my wife at a live action game of Vampire the Masquerade when I was just out of college by about 2 years. That was one moment.
Nice.
When my son was born, we sat together and we watched the Lions lose on Thanksgiving Day, the day after he was born. That was true love. When my daughter curls up in my lap and says, I'm the best daddy ever because I streamed with her.
Oh, man.
And when I was gifted the Ravenloft Advanced Dungeons and Dragons module.
Yes.
And I started running that.
Yeah.
Way back. Oh, hi, Kiwi. When she wants back again.
She's right on the arm of the chair. I'm actually allergic, and so she knows. This is the only time I don't like. Cat, you can't be near me. Is when I'm streaming. I let her maul me. So, but yeah. So Ravenloft was so different at the time. Yes. That's amazing. That's great. That was like the thing, you know.
And my players hated me because I ran it as it was written. So things like he's going to charm a member of the party to fight against everyone. He's going to try to isolate the party so he can pick them off. He's going to use traps to do this. And it's like, you're just out to get us, man. And I'm like, no, I'm running the adventure as it's written.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. Oh, I had a set of buddies when I got to college, because we played it whenever it came out. I can't remember, but when we got to college, I had two friends who we would play it every Halloween. We would spend a weekend. Again, you would spend an entire weekend playing D&D, not 3-4 hours, an entire weekend. So the kiddo, I love you dearly, but you gotta go. Go. Okay. And one of the roommates would sit in the bedroom and would be Lord Strahd. And the rest of us would be players, and the GM would go and ask Strahd, your scouts have come and told you, blah blah blah. The players have done, and then so someone playing Strahd would be like, send my wolves, and so then we'd be like, you hear the howl of wolves. The DM would come back out and be like, soon you hear the howl of wolves, and so it was this total, until the final confrontation, and my buddy Brian would come out of the bedroom, Dracula'd out, and then we'd fight Strahd. It was awesome. So Strahd got to roll his own dice against us and things. And, so yeah, that used to be our Halloween tradition.
Oh, that is so awesome. And that's like, you can't ever like replace those moments. And what's neat though, it's like I'm sitting here like, I know how I would do that on a stream. Like my brain's already like clicked to we could totally recreate that with your job is to lurk in the channel and send me messages. Because at some point, we're going to go from 4 characters on the screen to 5.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a couple of D&D streams I found too that won't just do that. They'll go all the way in with Strahd in full makeup with the right background and everything, because that's where they roll. And it's who are they? I forget now. Let me see if I get the actual name of it. It's Legends of Avantris is the channel, and they They did starting in October a Curse of Ravenloft stream where they were all in cosplay the entire time.
Nice.
And I caught them after they'd finished up and they'd all changed and cleaned up and come back to have their decompression after like 2 months of gaming, and I didn't recognize half of them because it's like the girl who'd been playing the samurai, so she has the straight black hair with the bangs and everything, and she's in a the samurai kimono. She has like bright purple hair that's huge, poofy, and curly. And she was just sitting there in a t-shirt. I'm like, who is that? That's what?
And the voice is different. And
yes, because she's not doing this. The thing about Strahd that really sticks, there are two things I've taken away from it. The one is I always look at what Hickman wrote when he put it together. And famously, he was playing first edition. And they came around the corner, and the DM rolled some dice and went, "Oh, you wander into a vampire." And then they rolled initiative. And then he left for the evening going, "The hell is that vampire doing in this ruined castle?" Like,
yep.
What the hell? And he and his wife sat down and started brainstorming a vampire story, which would then go on to become the Ravenloft module, which I took to him to sign when I met him at DragonCon. I also had all of my Dragonlance books, and I wasn't able to get to his signing, so I was trying to catch him on his way into a panel. And he said, "I can't. My panel starts in like a minute and a half. I can't be signing books right now. I'm really sorry." Yeah. So I went to the back and sat down and kind of pouted. And this woman, who also then came and sat down next to me, asked if I was okay. I said, "Yeah, I'm just really disappointed. I've been trying to get hooked up with Mr. Hickman all weekend. I've had some conflicts that I couldn't get out of. And, I'm just really bummed that I carted all this stuff down here and I'm not going to get anything signed." And it's like, I got to meet him, and I guess that's good. And she's like, "Yeah, he's a really popular guy. I have a hard time pinning him down myself." And I look over, and her badge says Laura Hickman. and he actually almost kicked us out of the panel because we started gossiping about Ravenloft, and we weren't overly quiet about it because we're both fans of it.
Right.
And for the longest time, the only autograph I had on my Ravenloft copy was hers.
Right.
But so we there's that piece. The other piece I think is that the storyline has endured from that edition on. There's a third edition printing of it. There's a fourth edition printing of it. And with fifth edition, they have, however you feel about it, printed it twice.
Yep. Well, and it became a setting. That was the, not just a module, not just a 96-page book, but a setting where, it had a box set and everything, so.
All right. Check your posture.
Oh.
Get up there. Square away.
Push the lumbar support down.
Take this as an advantage to do a little. There we go. Cut out some of my headroom. There. Thank you for that.
So, real quick, while we got the moment, thank you, Raven Knight.
Yes.
I want to show off my ancient DMG. As you can see, the corner has been chewed off by a pit bull. I left my books at my friend's house, and his pit bull gnawed the corners off of it. We need it and scratched the pages all to hell. And then we had to.
But it survived.
But it has survived. And we had to eventually outlaw orange soda at the table because people kept spilling their Luds cups of orange soda and staining my books. So well loved.
Yeah,
well loved.
The non-Michigan folks, I don't think, appreciate the propensity for colored sodas that we Michiganders have through the Faygo company.
Yes.
I think that's a very Michigan gamer thing is do you have the Faygo, and which flavors did you bring?
Yes. Pineapple? Why did you bring pineapple?
It's what you bring. But it's funny, with the game I'm running on Sundays, I would actually categorize as a Ravenloft setting. I'm not sure I want Strahd to be the lord of a plane, because I kind of want to have the door open to eventually run Curse of Strahd.
Yeah.
But I definitely am trying to be evocative of that. They're in a land that's oppressive. It's oppressed. There's never sunlight anymore. The days are dark and dreary, and everyone's just sort of like scraping by the skin of their teeth, and they're not, they live in a universe where their shadow is as likely to murder them as the town cutthroat.
Right.
And pineapple is delicious. It eats you from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
You have to kind of wonder whose thought it was. Like, this fruit, it's so sweet it burns my tongue. Let's find more ways to eat it.
Humans. Again, any human who looked at a crab, which is a large armored spider, and went, I'm going to eat that. That's not right. Jalapenos. It's so... I need to make salsa. Only human beings. Animals know better.
And that's the problem with writing for dungeons, for writing for any role-playing game, is what we come up with is supposed to make sense.
Right.
Whereas all of the human endeavors are like, hey, let's see what happens. Then, so that gets us through. Let's see. I did not play a lot. I played a lot of second edition. Third came out, and I actually went through a bit of a hiatus. I played some.
Second edition.
Yep.
How the art styles have changed.
I don't remember anything major when I was playing second, though, that really stuck out.
Other than Barbarian and Cavalier showing up, those were like, those were just amazing. They were, you could actually be a knight in shining armor without having all that holy crap and that kind of thing going on. And of course, the only reason that the Barbarian and Acrobat showed up in the D&D cartoon was because Unearthed Arcania had come out in like 86 or whatever, and hence those were new classes. So they wanted to promote the new stuff. That is something too that people don't a lot of people don't understand, is how big Dungeons and Dragons was and how controversial it was in the 80s. I mean,
oh Lord, we could do an entire topic night of the grief we've gotten over the years the minute we say we play Dungeons and Dragons, and everyone's come back to that in 10 seconds. Everyone will go, oh, you play that game. In fact, I had a buddy in high school whose mother allowed him to play any role-playing game he wanted except Dungeons and Dragons. Because about that time, which is, I think it was second edition. I don't think third was out yet. But it was coming up soon. We played Shadowrun. We played Robotech. We played...
nice.
We didn't play GURPS. We played Earth Dawn, which was Shadowrun's fantasy game.
Right. Yeah.
The Satanic Panic. Absolutely.
Yes.
And also a campaign that mixes with Castlevania Curse of Darkness. Yeah. There's a lot of good... The gothic horror setting, really, I think that's what happened with with Ravenloft, the first module, was it told nerds, here's a really interesting genre of fiction. Now go play with it.
Yeah.
And that's the gothic horror.
My home, quote unquote, home campaign before the plague hit was basically set in Darkest Dungeon. And I had pulled the monsters and everything from Darkest Dungeon, and that's pretty much, the setting I had. Oh, you want to have a gun? Sure. Here's my rules for guns. Good luck with that. Okay, I'll fire it.
I think for me as a gamer, during the phase where third edition is coming out, was where I was really much, if it's in the rule book, that's what we do. Like, you can't have a gun because you're not in the rule book. You can't do this because it's not in the rule book. If you want that, find me the rules for it, and we can bring it into the game. And I don't know how much of that was where I was at that stage of my gaming life and how much of that was what they had given me, because third edition really like opened the gates for try this, try that, mix this, mix that, and then the concept of the feats. And the artwork now looks like arcane books.
Mm-hmm.
No more crazy cover art of half naked women with fighting off dragons.
So I've got a good. My perception and whatnot was we came out of a time of Dungeons and Dragons where it had become adversarial. It was we're playing a game, and during like first and second edition, and it's me, the DM, versus you, the players.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, really was, that sort of thing where and I fortunately was the DM, and I was also an older brother, so I was pretty used to being like, you're gonna kill my monsters. Let's have fun, right? But people I played with and people I have heard the horror stories of were like, okay, 1 week the players would figure out something cool, like I'm going to cast Iced Wall, but I'm going to cast it vertically in the air. And, the ice wall would fall on the orc army as it rushed forward, blah, blah, blah. Well, the very next week, the DM would be like, my 4 ice wizards cast 4 consecutive ice walls and drop them on the players, and I think third edition was a reaction to that adversarial, play where they were like, no, there is a rule for it now. There is no, in first and second, you had to trust your DM because, again, rocks fall, players die. And I think that was the big thing that drove third edition to have a rule for everything. And hence, we had 8 pages on how to grapple because you needed rules, and you needed a rule for everything in third. That was crazy.
Oh. Yes.
Yes?
Oh, not so yes.
Oh.
But okay. My immediate supervisor is going to be quarantining through the middle of the month because his wife has tested positive for COVID.
Oh.
That's the not yes. The yes, this is why I heard my email chime. I think everyone heard that chime and watched me look down in the corner of the screen. Is my tentative placement for our path learning in the building I teach at, which means I will not be returning to face-to-face instruction with students this school year. Tentatively. There's a lot can change still, because this is still 2021, which still has the lingering effects of 2021 on it. So I do have to kind of keep that as a reality check, but I'm tentatively safe, which is good because I have 10 weeks of paid vacation or paid sick time that I was ready to throw at the situation to say, well, my doctor says between my breathing condition and my anxiety, I should not be going back.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a thumbs up on that one. Anywho, I think you're not wrong. I think the other thing that for me as a player coming up through the years of Dungeons and Dragons is the introduction of the feat system with third edition. The idea that not all fighters are fighters. You have a lot of variety within the classes. And I think that was a big change. Yes, coming back to that thought in a second, there was a big change in diversity is not the right word because diversity kind of means something different now, but it's the right word in the sense of not all rogues are made the same anymore. Not all spellcasters are made the same anymore. Not all clerics are made the same. And you got into that, let's figure out what we're doing with the added unfortunate twist of I can tell you the right feat for the right class with the right stats, and if you don't do that, you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. The tech tree. the tech tree of D&D.
Well, and things like, well, why? If you're a fighter, why are you taking the 2 weapon feat? That's not going to give you. You'll get more damage per turn if you do blah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I will not say 2021. That is not a thing I do. I'll say it only as much as I am saying that I will not say it. I will never again speak of that year. This year is 2021, as all following years will be, so that I shall never speak of that year again. Oh, hey, RJ, welcome aboard. And yes.
RJ!
And that is the thing. It's that sense of my rogue is my rogue, and she's going to have these quirks because she's not everybody else's rogue.
Yeah.
And I bumped into that problem back when I was playing Shadowrun. They had physical adepts, which were magic powered martial artists. And I made up a street kid. And I made her a physical adept, and she was like 14. And all of her physical magic powers were athletics checks and stealth checks. The idea of she's just so good, you'll never land a punch on her because she's already like swinging from the girders in the room. She can't hit you, but you can't hit her. And that's the whole shtick of the character. And the guys I play with are like, that's stupid. And the downside with the dude running the game takes a dump on your character concept, character's kind of humped.
Vampire the Masquerade, I created a Bruja who was named Cockroach, and it was nigh impossible to kill him. I mean, just literally, even in White Wolf, it would have been very, very hard to kill him. He had no other powers. He literally was, like you said, a scrawny street kid, but he could take like a literal 50 caliber round to the skull and stand back up. Ow, you know, it's just that hurt. Yep, and it comes back together and he stands.
Oh, there's definitely room for analysis paralysis when you're making a character. And I think that's part of, again, I think 3 and 3.5 had a lot of those, still had barriers to entry because you end up with, you sit down with someone who's new and you say, what do you want to do? And they say, well, I want to stab things. You're like, okay, it sounds like a fighter or a rogue. Let's go rogue. Well, what kind of rogue do you want to be? Well, I don't know. And then you kind of have like 2 types of dungeon masters. You've got the one who goes, well, then you need to figure it out. Here, read. Or you have the ones that go, okay, tell me about this person you're envisioning, and I'll help you navigate this pile of rules.
Yeah, exactly. Either like, oh, here's just the rogue books. Okay, good luck, you know.
Homebrew have a partisan hoplon shield, longsword, greatsword, and 2 hip holsters filled with crossbow bolts. I'm the wizard.
I'm a wizard.
Also, fun fact, if anyone, you can tell the age of a game. You know how you like cut a tree and you can count its age in rings? Here's a test for the age of a Dungeons & Dragons player. Watch their reaction when you introduce your cleric who carries a sword.
Right.
The greater amount of recoil, the older a gamer they are. Because clerics have been allowed to use edged weapons since 2nd edition. But a lot of us we cut our teeth on the hard and fast rule: a priest will never shed blood.
Yes.
Ironically, they'll beat you with a spiked club.
Exactly.
But they won't cut you.
Right. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
I blew somebody's mind. I had a cleric who had a bow. Was her god's favorite weapon. And he's like, wait, you can do that? And I went, yep, look, right here. It's in the priest book. It's a god. Favored weapon, longbow. So that's my character.
Yeah. Hence, when deities and demigods had come out, that's when that all shifted, and people were like, oh, "What do you mean?" It's just like, oh, I can't find my stupid morning star right now, but you know, here we'll just get a maul. You know, it was all like Yes, exactly. And that's what I always said. I'm like, are you kidding me? Blunt trauma sheds all kinds of blood.
Where's your bludgeoning weapon? Well, the tip of the arrow can cause a bruise.
Yeah, yeah.
But
oh goodness.
The other, I think, interesting way of judging. Well, take it easy, Raven. Thanks for hanging out tonight.
Yep.
We're gonna go. I think we're gonna go to about 6:30, and we're gonna start to wrap up. We had planned an hour. I don't think after some banter together, we're ever gonna hit an hour as our mark.
Right.
And I'm fine with that.
Yep.
I have nothing else going on my Tuesday afternoons, so I say we keep hanging here till the girl behind me calls last call.
Yep.
And I don't think she will.
I have it on good authority. She won't. She just won't.
This is what I was going to mention. I'm on a cosplay group for Michigan, and I pitched this back when we went into quarantine, and nobody took me up on it. And now I'm like, I might just commission it. I want a Zoom background, so I want someone to make a video loop of like a kitchen. It could be their kitchen. I don't care, and make it a 5-minute loop or a 10-minute loop. And at some random moment, have Batman walk in, open the fridge, grab a piece of pizza, and walk out. And that's it. Just that. And then send me the JPEG of the picture from it so I can do crazy stuff like create like a 30-minute video to run in my background. So that even I don't know when Batman's going to wander through. But just for that one moment of, wait, did
Batman just...
But
no.
I might commission this now because I really kind of want that. Just for the wacky. So I think another way to judge the age of D&D players too is how they reacted to 4th edition. Where did you land on that? So
I was fortunate enough to be on in a pre playtesting group for 4th, and the people I played with at the time were like, nope, grognards, can't, no, we'll never, this is a video game, why are we doing this? So all of my 4th edition experience I had to come up with like at game shops and, playing with people who'd never played before. So I only got to play a very few times in 4th, but it had good elements and it had really bad. If it had been called Cypher, or, Worlds of Fantasy, it would have been huge. It would have had a following if it would have been the World of Warcraft role-playing game.
Yes.
It would have done beautifully. Mm-hmm. But because it was labeled Dungeons and Dragons, its base, the base players who were like disenfranchised with 3.5 and, the bloat of 3.5 and, overwhelmed with Pathfinder or sick of Pathfinder by that point. They were just burned out. They weren't ready for that kind of leap into 4th, in my opinion, and from where I was at as a gamer and, in the community.
One thing I think that was really good about 4th is that it introduced the idea that the wizard is no longer, especially at 1st level, the magic missile, fall back with my dagger. Or even in 3rd edition, you might go magic missile, and then now you're a short bow, back ranker, and you're done. You're like a lesser ranger.
Yes.
I just want to be a Gish.
Yes.
But that's the 4th edition. I too wish to be a melee. Yeah, and that's the thing the 4th kind of said was like, no, it makes sense for the wizards and the clerics to always have a thing they can keep doing. And that was
well.
Go ahead.
Oh, what I always said to people who had played or been playing is, okay, my barbarian can stand here and do 2d6 plus 6 all day long. Why can your wizard go, I threw my d6s and I'm waiting to do a skill check. You know, it just wasn't. There was no point. It was beautiful in my opinion. That, you know.
It also gets a little bit too it shows some of the transition from, if you look at what we've said so far about first through third, we didn't talk a lot about the evolution of magic other than the references, but the supporting literature that people drew from, like we mentioned back when we talked about the beginning of the Red Box, was wizards are powerful when they're experienced. And the argument went, and I remember posting this on the Dungeons and Dragons forums, a 10th level wizard is going to beat a 10th level fighter any day of the week. The game is helping the wizards survive to 10th level.
Right.
Which sounds great if I'm, George R.R. Martin writing a book, but if I'm asking some guy to sign on to come every week for 3 years before he can feel cool.
Yes.
There's not a lot of incentive to stay it gets into that. We all went to DnD because it's what our friends were doing, but how many new players were going to show up, say, I want you can do magic, I want to do magic, and then you go, well, okay, but you can't do cool magic till sometime next year.
Yes.
And that's only if you come every week and you get all your experience. Because if you miss a week.
6th level, finally, fireball is mine. It was always just that was always it. It was always that keep the wizard alive, in as long as you can. I mean, again, talking about the magic, sleep spell used to be brutal to low-level monsters. You were like, blam, everybody's out, and that became the thing where what's the morality of the party? Not necessarily the alignment, but the morality, because the wizard puts them all to sleep, and who is it who goes around and stabs everyone to death?
Well, and it's interesting because, I was just reading an article on this, and this is not the week to tackle it. At least the bigger picture of the article, and that had to do with the evolution of the races in Dungeons and Dragons, and their decision in the upcoming printings is that there will no longer be evil races. No race in the game no monster, no nothing that is sentient is labeled evil. And at the time, back in first edition, second edition, advanced, and third, you had evil races, so that you didn't have to feel guilty knifing a sleeping goblin. Because he's evil. He can't help it. If we don't kill him now, he's going to go steal somebody's baby because he can't help it. He's naturally evil. And so it was really easy to go sleep everybody, now go around and do your coup de grace, because you're not committing murder. You're putting down rabid creatures.
Yeah.
And that's a thing that WotC now is starting to kind of grapple with, is the implications of that. And so they said, you know what? Nope, we're gonna change it up a little bit. Everything has the option to choose to be evil.
Yes.
Or might be in an evil culture.
Right. Right.
Most of
it was.
Go ahead.
Oh, I did like we were going to try to get through editions where you want to stick with that? Okay. All right. We'll talk about morality and alignment and all that some other day. But fourth was one of those things that definitely it passed most of the people I was playing with at the time by, and you could pull some really good stuff from it. The really bad stuff, in my opinion, the stuff that I didn't like it was almost... They tried to make everything kind of equal, and it just really kind of felt like, okay, this is the same flavor of oatmeal as this flavor of oatmeal. They're just calling the stuff different things. They're calling the blueberries peaches here, and these are blueberries, but they're still blueberries. It really, because everybody had powers, everybody had this, everybody had healing, everybody had everything. So your team building wasn't as important, or you had roles which gave you a little bit of difference, but cut and dry, it really felt like the power level was so even that it made it feel weird. It just didn't feel right.
Well, definitely all the strikers were damage dealers, and the only thing that really differentiated the power sets were the names and some of the interesting side effects. But your wizard still shot stuff that did damage and sometimes did area damage, and your wizard shot stuff that did damage and sometimes area damage. And your ranged rogue shot stuff that did. I mean, it's like they were trying to kind of set up where you should have a striker, you should have a tank, and you should have a healer. You should have you should have the Holy Trinity. And then, and at least to their credit, they brought back the controller.
Yes,
because that was a thing from EverQuest 1 that I loved playing.
Right.
And they got rid of in the new generation. There's no strictly crowd control classes in any MMO anymore.
And that's one of the reasons also what you're just saying now is why I said if they had come out with 4th edition and it was called World of Warcraft roleplay game, it would have sold like hotcakes.
Which they did come out with a World of Warcraft variant, I think, on 4th edition.
Yeah.
But again, and I've even had LB Hackemup grew up in my area, and she was actually over for my first play test of 4th edition.
Nice.
Yeah, and I remember her review was, it was like playing World of Warcraft and eating lasagna, except that I was eating lasagna with people in the same house. And it's like, she's not wrong. And that was kind of like her first impression. But so that's where, and then that takes us to where we are now with 5th, which has been, I think, here it comes. It's so weird seeing it on a dead tree, because like I have almost, like, I have all the base books. I have no idea where they are in the house right now, because I haven't opened one in months.
Exactly. Because I knew we were going through the editions like 10 minutes before, so I went back to the shelf and was like, pulled a book from each edition just to show how even the cover art has changed, and how we're almost back to like 2nd edition, in the cover art. So I don't know. I think just the visual of it is interesting.
Well, I think part of the digital age of gaming is they have so leveled the playing field for entry. Because for my Sunday game, Nebula, who's the one that I started gaming with, she's listening to her complain about lack of choices in computer gaming, made me say, well, you need to play some more tabletop games, which then led to, well, I'll run tabletop games. She hadn't played since college. Her husband, I found out after our first session, was a roleplay virgin.
Oh.
He had never played a tabletop game. He had only played computer RPGs. And part of the way he got through the whole first session without me knowing this is we had a shakedown session where we all got our characters taken care of in D&D Beyond. And then we had our first game session where it's like, well, what do you do? Well, hover over this, it'll tell you. And the website made everything so god-awful easy for him that we got through the first session. He's like, that was amazing. I've never experienced anything like, it's like we were all really there. And I'm like, I'm not that good of a DM. He's like, no, but it's like, where do you get the idea to describe these things? And and my brain's going, these are not questions gamers ask each other. Like, they weren't where'd you get this idea for this plot twist? It was like legitimate, how are you so good at describing a combat scene?
Yeah.
And I'm not great. I'm good, but I'm not great. Tune in on Sundays to see for yourself as to whether or not I'm good. But that's when I'm like, wait, is this your first RPG ever? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, I kind of wish I'd known I was your first. I would have treated you differently, perhaps. Which also has a lot of other implication. And not inappropriate either. I think, you got to remember those kinds of things because you'll always remember your first DM. What's the line? Good night, everybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think Fifth has really done a nice job, especially with the electronic side of things, at peeling away that barrier of entry of you want to play Dungeons and Dragons. Here's everything you need to look at and trying to find what role you need. It's like, oh, you want to play a wizard? Well, here are your 3 choices. And oh, you should have some background. Here's like 15 things. Pick one. Or talk to your DM and see if there's something he'd like to assign to you. And you can just kind of keep meandering through this menu, and then you're done. You're like, okay, let's play.
Yeah. Now, before D&D Beyond, here is one of my, because 5th edition really is my favorite edition of D&D, and it before something like D&D Beyond, my complaint about 5th edition was the layout. It was bass backwards, and you were just like, it should have been. By that time, I had played so many games that it was laid out like, here's how you make a character, step by step. 1, 2, 3, and the player's handbook is like, 1, okay, go to page 85 for the backgrounds, because I need to know what skills I get for my background before I start picking skills, because otherwise I pick skills and then I get my background and they're the same skills. Then I got to look at the list again under skills to, it was like, oh, you're killing me. You're just killing me. The layout. But that was the big complaint. I had been fortunate enough to be in on the playtest for 5th also, so that was really nice, because we kind of had, basically the SRD was what they had shipped out to any group who basically wanted to play, and then we were sending them back feedback, and it would have been nice if they had included more of the 4th edition feedback stuff. That would have made it a little better. But, there's always 6th.
Well, and what's fun is, like, I look over, because my collection's on the far side of the basement, and I can see it from my workstation. And it's like, I have so many piles and I can't bring myself to part with any of them. Right. And it's like, I'm not looking forward to, and I'm kind of digging the idea that we're moving into a world now where it's like, you know what? I'll drop $200 a year on a membership, and you give me the books. And and I'm okay with that. I think they've done such a good job with the D&D Beyond interface that I don't really want the Dead Tree editions anymore. Like, I'll just pay my membership, and when it's all over, I mean, I'm not going to run 2nd edition anytime soon unless I really feel a need to go to a con and say, we are doing a 2nd edition, kick down the door, make your own character in the first half hour kind of game.
Right.
And feel pretty good about, go on in and do the thing. But I still have them. And I'll never part with them. I actually pulled out my 3rd edition printing of Strahd with the intention of, because I knew there was a Paladin of Ravenkind in it, and I wanted to get some rule sets, because that's what I ended up doing with our Paladin, the Azteki, the new guy. He is now a Paladin of Ravenkind.
Nice.
He made a Paladin without knowing anything about Paladins and Dungeons and Dragons. He just knew that in Warcraft, they're the heavy armor wearing magic users. And so he kind of wanted that. I want to wear armor so I'm safe, and I want to beat things with holy magic. And then when we did things, well, no, you champion a god. He kind of did oh, okay, yeah, I guess. And then I realized as we were playing, it's like, he hasn't thought at all about the god he's going to follow. So I have to give him a god.
Right.
And so he took the oath of Ravenkind, which was really fun to take him through, because there's all these tenets. You'll smite evil, protect the weak, and the last one is accept death. And there's a moment where the avatar is making him take the oath, and we get to that part, and he pauses and goes, wait, what? Like, right now?
Time.
And it's like, no.
15.
It's the inevitability of death. You accept that all things will die. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm down with that. But But yeah, so I keep them for that kind of thing. But I think fifth, the biggest thing I love about fifth is they kept the bare minimum for spellcasters to always have fallback stuff. Mm-hmm. You've got those cantrips that actually do some pretty decent damage that are always around.
And they scale.
They scale a little bit. Just like kind of like a fighter's weapon should. So they keep a little bit of that without completely sacrificing what makes them cool.
Right.
And so I think that's been a really neat thing to have kept around as they've moved into fifth. Excuse me.
I was really glad that they took away that they added concentration. I know heavy wizard players are like, because there's nothing better than flying while invisible, while while bark skinned, while you got like 6 spells going on, and you got like 8 10-sided dice, and you're flipping them all to keep track of how many rounds left on each spell, and why did I cast the fly spell first?
Oh God,
that type stuff. So yes, they a lot of people, the grognards and older players are like, they nerfed wizards. They're not worth playing anymore. And I'm like, no, wizards rock.
I watched a 3rd level wizard critical hit her first of 3 shots with that scorching ray thingy.
Yeah.
And then Max practically roll max damage when she rolled it on the first of the, like, she does all this damage, and then one of the player goes, I think you actually have 2 more rays to shoot.
Right.
And I'm like, holy shit. Okay, we're all going to see it for a little while longer while Neb keeps rolling her dice. Because this is the first session where she's not rolling ones for damage.
Yeah. Swipe that encounter aside, and let's move on, shall we?
But yeah, so I mean, they kept a lot of good things. The biggest thing I struggle with fifth that was not a problem in the previous editions, I felt like, was the type of rest you had. I did really like 4th editions. These are things you can do all the time. These are things you can do once per combat. And these are the big things that you can pull out when there's danger, and you pretty much have to go to bed afterwards. And I liked that with 4th. I would have liked it. They've kept some of those things with 5th, but I have a harder time keeping track of what happens at each kind of rest.
Right.
But I also think that the other twist that we have coming at it is we've also, every complaint I've heard about 5th, for the most part, has also been things from like, well, that sounds like it's a bad thing until you think about what this looked like 30 years ago.
Yes.
When you think about where the game was and its accessibility to a player 30 years ago, yes, you're right. This is kind of a pain. And this loops back to where we started, which was someone was complaining about figuring out to hit modifiers. And we both went, dude, if you haven't calculated THAC0, you got nothing to whine about.
We're about to rest. I've got X number of spell slots left. They're all for heals. Heal as much as we can, because we get like our 1 hit point plus our Constitution modifier in hit points back for sleeping 8 hours. It's like, oh, the dawn comes. Grognard the barbarian gets 4 hit points back. So then the cleric goes, okay, I've used my whole day's spells to heal you idiots. I am now a subpar fighter with my shield and my bludgeoning weapon. Let's tromp the dungeon until I can sleep again.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I think, another side of the old school gamer is I've had an 8-hour rest. I need another one right now.
Yes.
And that's a mechanic that's always been a bit of a pain with the additions over the years. I also wonder, too, to a degree, how much my preference for the storytelling aspect, let's get a good reason to go here and do things, is a matter of the edition I've been playing or a matter of my age as a gamer. Because I do feel like the later editions has encouraged it more.
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, just adding backgrounds and such is so much more story driven, and I mean, they basically tell you to tell stories now. They needed a little more of it, I think, in the DMG, not just here's how or here's what and here's some charts. They kind of needed, I think, a little more in the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide to kind of be like, I don't know, not dumbed down, but just, you're telling a story together. Here is, more of a dungeon world kind of mentality where we're telling a story together. We are all players in this game. Yes, you, Dungeon Master, are the privateer, the provoker of situation, but you're in it with them, and they're in it with you. Either one of you gone, no game. I just think they needed a little more of that. But I'm happy with it. Like I said, it's my favorite edition in 40-some years, so I'm not gonna complain too much.
Well, the good news with it is that it has been carried by a lot of very passionate players, and for every grognard on the forums that when 4th edition came out said, this isn't Dungeons and Dragons, this isn't worth playing, I'm sticking with my 3.5 until I see the rule book for 5th. And I remember when 5th came out with it, they were calling it D&D Next, I think, at the time. Mm-hmm. And everyone was like deep into their, no, I'm not changing up again. I just got into D&D 4th, and I get all the rules, and I can do this. I know what I'm doing, and it works, and it's not as bad as we thought it was. It's for all of those layers. It's like it really... The thing about every one of those guys, and many women, they stayed, and they kept making noise, and certain ideas that were good got moved up and carried up to the next level. And I think that there's a lot of evidence of that in the game that we have, in the rule set we have now.
The anti-Pathfinder-ness of 5th was also a big thing. It was, we have a small team working on, they would put out one book a year, and Pathfinder was so much that it would have crushed that bookshelf, because it's just the player bloat and the just like we had said earlier, you want to be a rogue, here's just the rogue books, good luck on that. Yep. So, but I think it's about that time.
I do. I think we've got into a good spot. If you have ideas for future topics for us to mull over, we're going to obviously be talking about what we're going to talk about next week. But feel free to leave a message. You can follow us on my Discord's popped up a couple times in the chat, and it's linked on the page. You can find both of us on Discord. Greybeard Tavern is, I believe, your Discord name, isn't it? So not too hard to find.
And then Twitter, Discord, YouTube, you name it. All I branded well enough.
And if you see this video off YouTube, feel free to leave something in the comments. Like and subscribe. Hit the follow buttons. Follow us for Twitch. Whatever you're on, find the button that lets you find out more of what we're making, and leave us feedback for what you'd like us to tackle next time, because obviously we have thoughts, we have opinions, we've got 80 years of gaming under our belts, and if you let us, we're going to go until literally she calls last call. So I stream Dungeons and Dragons games on Sunday night, and I play a variety of games on the weekends. Great. Where can we find you with some regularity?
So on Thursday nights, I play over at our dear friend Indoor Adventures channel. We are playing Tyrant Security, which is the acquisition, a homebrew world version of Acquisitions Incorporated module that came in the book. We're playing that out, and that's Thursdays at 8:30 EST. Friday nights, I'm over on G Game Nights. We were playing The Sprawl. We're keeping the same characters. We're moving into season 2. We switched to Cypher system, and basically cyberpunk, sci-fi crossover. And we're currently, for season 2, we're going to be living in a station circling the moon. And then you can check out my Sunday morning on my own channel here, where I get to play with all my toys. And currently we're playing through a playthrough of Griftlands until Darkest Dungeon 2 comes out.
Ooh.
That's me.
That'll be fun. All right. So until then, thanks for coming by. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being a part of the show. We're going to be back next week for another happy hour. And until then, please wear a mask. Above all else, stay safe.